Hi there, Richard Fulmer here, and welcome to another Richard's Rock Rambles. This is the channel where we look at all things rock related, whether it be metal, classic rock, blues rock, jazz rock fusion, only the good stuff. So what we've been doing is having a look at bands' second albums, their Sophomore album. And today's album was where the band went in a totally different direction. We're going to look at Jethro Tull's Stand Up. On their first album, it was basically a blues album. Because at the time in the UK, there was this big blues explosion with bands like Fleetwood Mac and Chicken Shack and Savoy Brown. You know, everybody was doing the blues thing. The early Zeppelin was also blues-based, really. So I suppose Jethro Tull thought, well, we better jump on that bandwagon, seeing as everybody else is doing it. But for me, that wasn't really their sound. It wasn't the stamp that they wanted to put onto their sound. And Ian Anderson, the main guy in Jethro Tull, he wanted to go in a totally different direction. So they released that album, which was called This Was. I mean, as a title for your first album, This Was. A bit strange. It's almost like saying, well, this is our first album, now we're done. Cheers. But anyway, that's what it was called. It was okay. There were a few standout tracks. So this was the This Was album. And you can see that cool cover there. Sorry about the glare. The guys trying to look like garden gnomes. With all the dogs at the bottom here, if you can see that. There's not really much to show you inside. That's the back picture. So in the band you had Glenn Cornick on bass, Ian Anderson on flute and vocals, plus guitar and numerous other things, and Clive Bunker on drums, and Mick Abrams on guitar. He was the guy that would leave after this album because he wanted to carry on doing blues, and Ian Anderson wanted to go in a totally different direction. So he left the band, and that's Mick Abrams over there, looking very old and decrepit with his walking stick. So that was This Was. Then they recorded Stand Up, the second album, and in came a guy by the name of Martin Barr, a stunning guitarist, with Jethro Tull right up until the mid-2000s, I think, when he left. Bit of an acrimonious split there between him and Ian Anderson. Such a sad loss. For me, his guitar sound was as integral to Tull as Ian Anderson's flute playing, songwriting and everything else. But nevertheless, he's gone on to have a pretty successful solo career, still touring today and doing Tull stuff plus his own music. So the second album was recorded at the Morgan Studios in London between the 17th of April 1969 and the 21st of May 1969. And then it was released on the 25th of July 69 in the UK, and much later, the 29th of September in the US. The label was Island in the UK and Reprise in the States, and produced by Terry Ellis and Ian Anderson. Terry Ellis was the guy in charge of that label called Chrysalis, and Jethro Tull was the main band within the Chrysalis label. So on the album, you had Ian Anderson on vocals, flute, acoustic guitar, Hammond organ, piano, mandolin, balalaika, and harmonica. I think the only thing Ian Anderson didn't do on this album was probably make the tea. Martin Barr, the new guy on the block, he was there on electric guitar and additional flute, so he also played the flute. The late Glenn Cornick on bass, a really great bass player with a bass sound high up in the mix. You know, that's what I loved about the early 70s. Your bass guitar wasn't lost in the mix. It was right up front. It was an integral part of your sound. And the great Clive Bunker on drums and percussion. Clive Bunker on the first album, This Was, had a great track called Dharma for One, which showcased his drumming. Interesting drummer. Excuse me. So the album, this Stand Up, went to number 1 in the UK charts in 69, which is not too shabby. I mean, it's only their second album, and to have a number 1, pretty good. And number 20 in the Billboard 200 in the States. So I have it on vinyl and I have it on CD. And I must tell you a little story. The vinyl LP I have been after for many years, many years, you know, and I'll show you why in a second, why it's so special to me. Recently, about 2-3 months back, I finally found it at a vinyl fair here in Cape Town, and I was so chuffed. The guy gave me a really decent price for it. I managed to bring him down in price a little bit. You know, these guys at the fairs, they're always willing to haggle. And yeah, it was search over. I finally got the original cover of Jethro Tull's Stand Up. So this is the CD that I've always had. And that's that great wood carving cover there, which was so unique for the time, I thought. Such a cool cover. So there you had Clive Bunker lying down at the bottom. That was Martin Barr. That was Glenn Cornick. And there was Ian Anderson. And so that was the back. 4 guys walking away there. So that was my CD copy that I had for many years. And this is the baby that I found recently. And this is a thing of beauty. I hope I do this justice. So that's the front. As you can see, that's why I love vinyl. It just makes such more of a statement than a puny little CD cover. And that's the back. And then if you open this up, because the album's called Stand Up, there they go. Pop-up figurines of the guys in the band. I think this album cover actually won an award for covers in 1969. Really clever marketing, I thought. So there we go. Stand Up. Brilliant. Love it. So what are the tracks on here? And all the tracks on here are good. There's not a bad track on this album. And a few of them would go on to become staples for Jethro Tull, which would need to be played right throughout their career up until today. I mean, Jethro Tull is still going. Ian Anderson has recently released an album under the name. Some of the guys have been with him for a while. And I think even now they still have to play tracks on this album. Although Ian Anderson does struggle a bit with the early stuff, especially to get those high notes. He's now in his close to 80, I think. And the voice can't do what it used to do when you were in your 20s. So the first track is called A New Day Yesterday, which is a beautiful track. Starts off with that slow bass guitar and then just works itself up, as a lot of tracks did back in the day. Really great lyrics. As per usual with Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson, great songwriter. Jeffrey Goes to Leicester Square is the next track. Also very quirky, English style. Great guitar work from Martin Barr. You can see he's a step up. Even in his early days, he was a few steps up from Mick Abrams, who was basically just a blues guitarist. Then you had Jethro Tull's take on J.S. Bach's Bourrée, or Bourrée. And that was Ian Anderson's take on it, sort of an instrumental piece, which would also go on to become a favorite. And when they did it live, he would then launch into a flute solo and do his all crazy things, snorting through the flute and standing on his one leg and going crazy. So that became a sort of a party piece for Jethro Tull. Then there's a great track, Back to the Family, also sort of a mid-tempo track. Look Into the Sun, Nothing is Easy. That's the other track on here that became a big hit. Great lyrics as well, some excellent guitar work, great flute work as usual from Ian Anderson. Fat Man with some really quite funny lyrics to that as well. We Used to Know, Reasons for Waiting, and For 1,000 Mothers. That's the final track. So there are 10 tracks on your all in all. I think this has been given the deluxe treatment as well. I don't have that. And I think on there they've also released a few bonus tracks which weren't on the original album on the deluxe version. Some of these have also been given deluxe box sets treatments. That's one thing about Jethro Tull. When they reissue something, they do it really well. So yeah, Jethro Tull's Stand Up. If you don't have this and you're a Tull collector, you're really missing out. And if you're new to Jethro Tull and you want to get into their stuff, a great starting point, especially for their early work, where, later on there will be a lot more synthesizers in the 80s and keyboards. This is them in a basic format, very much of the time of the early 70s. Incredible album, well produced for the time by Terry Ellis. And it's an album that I reach for quite often. Some excellent tracks, especially that instrumental Bourrée. That is a great track. I've actually featured that on my radio show as well, which you can catch. There is a link in the description for my radio show. You could just click on that. It'll take you to it. Thanks, guys, for watching. Catch you again next time. Next time around, we're going to have a look at Led Zeppelin, who released not one, but 2 albums in 1969. That's how they did it back in the day, before social media and the internet. If you wanted to be noticed and you wanted to make an impact, you had to release albums and tour, release album, tour. And that's what they did in 69. So we're going to have a look at Led Zeppelin 2. Any comments down below, please give me a thumbs up. That'll be great. Subscribe if you haven't. Have a great week, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.